This is the iPhone XR. Why was this the most hated iPhone ever? To answer that, let's go back to 2018.
The iPhone XR.
At $749, the iPhone XR was a pretty expensive phone. It packed what a lot of people called a horrible display, cheap design and inferior cameras compared to the iPhone XS. Honestly, what did you expect from a cheaper phone? And before it even released, a lot of people drew conclusions like it's the most disappointing iPhone ever, it's very depressing and Apple is too greedy for profit. But do you know what was the best-selling phone in 2019 and 2020? It was the iPhone XR. And as time went down, it went down so much in price to which now you can snag one for about $250. That's a great deal. I would say it was Apple's smart move to get a lot of people into using an iPhone. Ever since the iPhone XR, we have a clear distinction between iPhones. If you want one that just works, you get the standard model, and if you want one that does a lot more, you get the Pro. And to get it down to that low price, they cut down on a lot of things, starting with the display. Look, the display is fine. On paper, the iPhone XR has a 6.1-inch liquid retina LCD display with a resolution of 828p. Now that alone is going to throw off a lot of people. First, why is this display not 1080p? And second, why is a high-end phone using LCD? Well, for the first one, resolutions really don't matter because you're not going to notice these high resolutions on these small displays and it's going to drain a lot of battery. What does make a difference is pixels per inch or PPI. The iPhone XR has a pixel density of 326, which makes it a retina display like the iPhones before it. The only thing better than it are the OLED iPhones, which have a pixel density of 460. What does this all mean? The iPhone XR is sharp enough from a normal viewing distance. Are you really going to put your phone up close to your eye? But what about the LCD display? Well, to be honest, this is the best LCD I've seen on any phone. The colors are accurate, vibrant, and it gets pretty bright outdoors. Apple has really tuned this display well that it matches the OLED iPhones in terms of color accuracy. What I feel is way more annoying are the bezels. These are probably the thickest bezels you'd find on a high-end phone. It is even thicker than the bezels on the iPhone 8, which also used an LCD display. The other thing that is annoying is how they omitted 3D touch from this phone. The iPhone XR had a pretty thick display that they couldn't fit 3D touch in. They replaced 3D touch functions with haptic touch, which is literally a long press, and it's not as intuitive or responsive as 3D touch. But this phone sold well and nobody really cared about 3D touch that Apple just axed the whole thing with the iPhone 11. Speaking of the display, this was the second phone after the iPhone 10 that had Face ID and it just works. It's not something you could rely on like Touch ID. It's slow, it sometimes can't recognize your face, it doesn't work over multiple angles or on landscape. For some reason, I've entered my password many times with this phone because Face ID came up. This display was good enough that Apple went on to use the same exact panel on the iPhone 11 and that also went on to being the best-selling phone. Okay, enough about the display, there's a lot more to this phone. The design is the same as the iPhone XS and XS Max, but it swaps out the stainless steel for aluminium, which made the phone cheaper and lighter than the iPhone XS. The size slotted right in between the iPhone XS and XS Max. The in-hand feel of this phone is much better than newer iPhones, but due to its thickness, it's hard to reach a few corners. They didn't skip out on any of the other features. It still had wireless charging, there was an IP67 rating, the bezels of the front were symmetrical, though they were pretty thick, and the glass on the front and back were really durable, but dear god it picks up a lot of scratches. What made this design stand out compared to other iPhones are the colors. This wasn't the first time Apple did a colored phone. The iPhone 5C came in 5 bright colors, but it was made out of plastic, which made it seem cheaper. The iPhone XR, on the other hand, comes in 6 colors. All of these colors were bright, vibrant, and since it used aluminium and glass, it felt premium. I do feel that the colors made the phone look cheap in comparison to the iPhone XS and XS Max, which came in grey, silver, and gold. But the XR was supposed to be the cheaper option, and the colors were a nice addition to the lineup. You finally had an option from the boring black and white. This colored iPhone strategy worked so well that they still do it with regular iPhones and refreshed them every spring with a new color. You know what would be extra? A sub to this channel. I just made that up. This design is very clean, there's no crazy camera bumps or anything, everything feels so simple. Let's take a look at that single camera at the back. Now phones in 2018 came with 2 cameras at the higher end. But here's the thing, would you take a phone that has a single camera which is optimized to take reliably good photos, or would you take a phone that has 2 cameras for the namesake and one of them does nothing? The iPhone XR borrows the main camera from the iPhone XS, which is a 12 megapixel f1.8 optically stabilized camera, and the photos are how you'd expect them to be. Colors are rich and accurate, there's good contrast, a lot of detail. This is the first iPhone with Smart HDR which performs decently. You can notice it does a lot of post-processing, and at night it tries to keep up, but there's no night mode, so some shots do look blurry. Comparing it to the iPhone 13 Pro, well, they're pretty similar. It's at low light where the iPhone 13 Pro shines. This was the first iPhone that did portrait mode with a single camera, and it does a decent job. It only works on humans and you don't get all the portrait mode effects. On the front, there's a 7-megapixel f2.2 camera which takes good photos at daylight and low light. Portrait mode works well on the front camera because it has a true depth camera system.
And this is the video quality from the iPhone XR. iPhones take the best video and this is no exception. Colors are accurate, the video is crisp and doesn't lose out on a lot of detail. It has a lot of dynamic range and at low light it still keeps itself out pretty well. It's 7 PM and I'm pretty sure the video still looks good.
Now video can go up to 4K 60 but extended dynamic range only works up to 30 FPS, which looks very similar to newer iPhones. It even has quick take video which was added after iOS 14 and it's so useful.
Front camera video is pretty good too, though it can only do 1080p at 60 FPS. Right now you're hearing the audio quality from the iPhone XR. And I don't mind a single bit using this camera in 2023. Maybe I did miss out on the ultra wide, but who cares?
The only reason why this phone's camera holds up well is because of the A12 Bionic. Not gonna lie, this is still a fast phone that you won't have issues using. Maybe you would have issues with having multiple apps open in the background, and surprisingly, it does support almost all the features on iOS 16 and iOS 17.
Back in 2018, the A12 Bionic was ridiculously fast. Faster than even some Macs at that time.
And the performance headroom does help it as the phone ages. When I made the iPhone 7 video back in 2021, it barely supported any of the new features of iOS 15, and the iPhone 7 was 5 years old at that time. The iPhone XR right now is also 5 years old and it supports almost all the new stuff. You'd be nitpicking to find what it doesn't support. Honestly, it doesn't feel like you're using an older iPhone. For basic tasks, this phone is way more than enough. Even intensive tasks perform well on. All of the apps that exist on the App Store run flawlessly on this. Games would be a bit slower than newer iPhones, but that's expected as newer iPhones have better processors and better GPUs. As of making this video, it runs iOS 16 and it is gonna get iOS 17, which is currently in beta. And iOS 16 is not great on this phone. iOS 16 is not great on any iPhone, so I'm not gonna butcher around that the phone is buggy. And I've tried iOS 17 beta for a bit and it was pretty good on this phone. What I do hate about this phone is how Apple throttled the cellular speeds with it, just so you get the iPhone XS. The iPhone XR has the same rough 4G speeds as the iPhone 6s from 2015. In 2018, that's pretty bad, and right now too, it's pretty bad. Speaking of cellular, this was the first iPhone that supported dual SIM, and it did with one physical SIM and one eSIM. As for longevity, I do feel Apple might support this phone for another 2 years. This is still capable enough to run modern software, but with Apple killing off support for even the iPhone 10 with iOS 17, it becomes a mystery with how far they are planning to support future iPhones right now. This is the oldest supported iPhone for iOS 17 and only time will tell how it's gonna age.
It's good now, so I expect it to age well.
What did age well over the years was its battery life. This phone I'm using here was used moderately for the last 5 years.
Any last guesses on the battery health?
It's at 88%, which already shocks me, and it still performs well. It gets about 5 to 6 hours of screen on time easily. That's crazy for a 5-year-old phone. When this came out, it had the best battery life on any iPhone. And it all comes down to the lower resolution display and the A12 Bionic being really efficient.
So what's really wrong with this phone? Honestly, it's the display.
As much as I tried making it sound like it's good and you'd be alright with it, it's not that bright compared to newer phones. I feel it looks a bit washed out. You can't really watch HDR videos with it. The bezels, I just don't like it. It looks like you have a case on your iPhone. As an all-around package, the iPhone XR is still an amazing iPhone. It's still faster than many mid-range Android phones. The camera, while there's only one, is still an excellent shooter. The display, while being mediocre, gets the job done. Its battery life is amazing, and the phone will still get another 2-3 years of support. It is by far the most value for money iPhone Apple's ever made, and there's no reason to hate it.
This is the first time I had zero issues with using an older phone. In my other videos where I've used some other older phones like the iPhone 6s, I always had some issue or the other.
Look, phones lately have been very incremental. You can barely tell the difference between an iPhone from 2019 and one from 2022. They all are pretty good now. You can't go wrong with any phone. It's when you start looking at specific things like better cameras, better displays, and bigger batteries.
Honestly, I don't mind if I have to use the iPhone XR as my only phone. It is 90% in the way of my iPhone 13 Pro. Not in the literal sense. The iPhone 13 Pro is obviously better than the iPhone XR, but the experience feels very similar. The only things I really missed were the cameras, 5G, and the design. At this point, any older flagship or newer mid-range phone works out well for everyone. Check this video out to see how I survived using a Windows phone in 2023.